Let's bring in ABC News contributor and host of the Law and Crime Network, Brian Buckmire, for more on this. Brian, first, just your quick reaction to this verdict. Is this how you thought this would go?
Well, good morning, Diane. No, actually, it wasn't. I would have thought it would have been flipped in the sense that Ruben Flores would have been found guilty and Paul Flores would have been found not guilty, just from the simple fact that there seemed to be more forensic evidence in the case as to the father, Ruben Flores, connecting his home to this burial location they found with trace amounts of blood. And you can see that the shape of a body, or like the size of a body, might have been buried there. Where on the flip side, you have Paul Flores, who it's a lot of conjecture, a lot of circumstantial evidence, a lot of I saw this and I thought it was this. I would have thought the convictions would have been reversed.
And now Paul Flores, Paul Flores' father, Ruben Flores, he was on trial at the same time, but this was a separate jury accused of helping to hide Smart's body. Why do you think the jury in that case decided to acquit him?
I think it's the evidence. Now, when you have separate juries, it's kind of like a game of musical chairs in the sense where both juries will stay there, and then when there's evidence that's specific to one defendant, one jury will be removed, and then vice versa. So these juries may sit there at the same time some of the times, but they're not hearing all of the evidence. I don't think, and I think what Paul Flores' attorneys are going to argue is that quote-unquote prejudicial evidence, those women who testified as to the mannerisms or actions of Paul Flores some 12 or 15 years later, that weighed a lot heavier on the idea that he committed the crime of murder to Kristin Smart, where when that evidence is not presented, such as in Ruben Flores' case, the evidence in the case seems a lot weaker. That could be a factor that I think Paul Flores' defense attorneys are going to argue strongly.
Now, during closing arguments, the defense in Paul Flores' case, the one who was convicted of killing Kristin, they said the case wasn't prosecuted for 25 years because there was no evidence, and there still is no evidence. Paul's father also said that this case was about feelings and not facts. So could we see grounds for an appeal here? Absolutely.
Now, the reason why I say that is because of one law in particular that is very unique to California. It's, I think it's a California Evidence Law 1108. And that basically says that if you're being charged with a sex crime, you're allowed to bring up other evidence, whether it be convictions or just the allegations, to say that there's a propensity that you could have done this. And for Paul Flores specifically, at least 2 women were allowed to testify based on this law to say anything from, hey, he looked a little sketchy during the interaction, he gave me some alcohol, and that I think is going to be what the defense hangs their hat on and say, this is too much, this should not have been allowed, this was propensity evidence and not direct evidence.
And Brian, quickly, you know, Paul and his father, they were both suspects for a long time, but a podcast on Kristin Smart reignited public interest in the case. We just saw Adnan Syed released from prison after the Serial podcast raised questions about his murder conviction. What's your take on how journalism is impacting the justice system right now?
I think it's doing an amazing job in terms of bringing these cases renewed life and renewed attention. We're seeing that the force that comes from people keeping eyes on a case and diving into it with an extra set of eyes really helps to galvanize police to trying to get to the bottom of these cases, trying to bring answers to these victims. However, it's a dual-edged sword. It could help, but it could also harm. It needs to be measured with the laws and with proper prosecution, defense attorneys, and judges.
All right, Brian Buckmire, we appreciate your analysis as always. Thanks, Brian.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.